Hey everybody, welcome. Today I would like to talk about my experience living with illness anxiety disorder, formerly or commonly known as being a hypochondriac or hypochondria, I believe. Before we proceed, I just want to let everyone know I am in my kitchen tonight. I've got dinner going, I've got some noodles on the pot, so I'm just stirring those as we do this video. So what is a hypochondriac? For those of you who might be clicking this video and not sure what illness anxiety disorder is, or being a hypochondriac. So let me just say, if you're watching this video, more than likely you know what it is, but it's the worry that you are seriously ill, going to become seriously ill, or for example, you might think that you have cancer when you likely do not possibly have it. But it's just the worry that something is wrong with your body. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience with that today. So my illness anxiety disorder, being a hypochondriac, started when I was a kid. When I was young, my very first memory is, and I'm going to just put it out there, I'm very sorry for being very blunt. So content warning here if you're offended by or disturbed by or anything like that, like some stuff to do with medical things, might be a good idea to click out of the video. Just wanted to give that warning. But my early experience is I used to have, when I was young, I had hemorrhoids. And so I had bleeding with the hemorrhoids, and I can remember, which of course that would naturally be alarming, right? I mean, at any age. I'm going to stir my noodles here real quick. Anytime that you have, and let me just put this disclaimer, don't use my video and think that if you're having some kind of symptoms, maybe you're just over worrying. It's good to have things checked out if you think there's a possibility that something's wrong. I'm not trying to say that, but I'm just sharing my excessive worrying over medical things. So when I was young, which just, being honest, I did have, some bleeding, rectal bleeding, and of course it was alarming. So I go to my family doctor, and being I'm young, they just, basically say, they kind of check me out, and they say, it's hemorrhoids. I was never comfortable, I guess, with that answer, because I always would, and this is where the anxiety disorder comes, the anxiety, like the hypochondria, comes into play, because I was never okay with that answer. I always assumed it was colon cancer, something far worse than just a hemorrhoid. And even though I heard a medical doctor confirm that to me, again, it just was never a satisfactory answer for me. And that seems to be the experience in my life with the anxiety, that with, being hypochondriac, I can go to a physician and I can present to them a symptom that I might have going on, and they could perform a battery of tests, and come back, it's not what I assumed it was, and it does not seem to ever be enough for me. It's never enough for me to just say a headache's a headache, or it's a migraine, or whatever. It's always doom, basically. It's always, this is the absolute worst thing it could be. So back to my experience being young. So like I said, I'd have the occasional bleeding, seen the doctor, and then it wasn't until a few years later in my life that I decided I'm worried. I want to see an actual gastroenterologist. So I seen my first one. We had an examination. We spoke, presented the symptoms, and she too said it's likely hemorrhoids, but never having a colonoscopy. Let's bring you in, do a colonoscopy and an upper scope, just so we can confirm that is what it is. I get that done, and it comes back. I had the internal hemorrhoids, external hemorrhoids, and that was the cause of the occasional bleeding. But even though I had just had that test done, I was always still, in my mind, convinced it's something far worse. If I was to go to the restroom and have an episode, even though that the doctor would basically confirm to me this is exactly what it is, I apologize, my meatloaf's going to be done in a second, so I'll have to pull that out. But I was still very much so convinced that, look, I've got colon cancer. Maybe they've not detected it. Or let's just say I got my colonoscopy done, right? And then, maybe 6 months later, if I had an episode, that came back or something, then basically I was convinced that maybe I didn't have colon cancer the first time. Maybe the colon cancer, maybe the bleeding was because I did have hemorrhoids, but now it's 6 months later. What if now the bleeding is something far worse and it's actually colon cancer? Or, so I would think this way, for basically a lot of things. Just like my headaches, I have had migraine headaches my entire life. I used to get them far worse when I was younger. I would get them to the point, and I think that probably what it was is because I was young, I wouldn't have the ability to catch them early enough to say, taking out my meatloaf. But I wouldn't have the ability to catch them early so that I could get rid of them sooner. So I do think that's probably part of why they were worse. But so then talking about my headaches, let's talk a little bit about that. So I would have the headaches, and then I was convinced that my headaches is a brain tumor. I would think this over and over. And when I get in this cycle, and what I mean by cycle is when I get this idea inside my head that this symptom is this. For example, this symptom is a brain tumor. This symptom is colon cancer. This symptom is lung cancer. Whatever it might be in that exact situation, I can't shake the feeling, and it literally just absolutely ruins my day when I get stuck on, oh my goodness, I'm dying, I have this, I can't explain it, but it's disabling to say the least. It takes away my happiness, it causes depression. I will go as far, and let me just say, with the headache thing, so I have had 2 MRIs to confirm that there is no brain tumor. By all means, if you're experiencing headaches, again, just with anything you could be having going on in your life, I don't want you to take my video and say, oh, okay, well, I have headaches, I'm looking for reassurance, and maybe it's just, like you said, maybe in your case it was this. Because, again, if you're experiencing symptoms, by all means, please do get checked out. It's better to be checked out and told you're fine, or it's this, or it's that, versus just chopping it up necessarily that it's just nothing and then it might be something. But like with the headache thing, just talking a little bit about that, so again, I've had 2 MRIs, I've gone to a neurologist, and I'll have these headache episodes come on where I guess kind of like researching it, it's kind of like called like cluster headaches, but I'll get a headache and I'll just assume it's a brain tumor. That's where my mind goes, or maybe it's a stroke, or maybe I don't even think that's a symptom, maybe. But I'll think something absolutely devastating, And even though I've had this MRI done, and the MRI has confirmed that I do not in fact have a brain tumor, I literally will have these headaches. Sometimes I'll have the episodes where I'll have I haven't had it for a while, but I'll go X amount of days and have a headache almost every day. Sometimes around the same time, but I've experienced that before and had an MRI and it came back fine. So again, it's likely just my headache pattern. It's normal, it's not outside the normal, so it shouldn't be something that I'm fretting about. But when I have these episodes come on, I'm still assuming, oh my goodness, I have a brain tumor, maybe it just grew, since the last time I had the MRI. And that's probably just not the best way to think, right? But for people like myself, and maybe someone out there watching this can relate, as a hypochondriac, someone living with this anxiety, this type of like anxiety disorder, I guess, you can clearly relate to the pain, I assume. Like I'll have a headache and it just like keeps replaying and replaying and replaying in my head. And it'll just be like, oh my God, this headache is a brain tumor this time. Maybe the previous headaches were not a brain tumor, but this headache is a brain tumor for sure. And I'll think that. And then I'll go as far as to think like, I'm going to lose my wife because I'm going to die. If I have this brain tumor, what if I just randomly start having a seizure? What if, all those things. And then here we go. Maybe a lot of people can relate to me on this. The Google. I get on the Google and I will always punch in my symptoms. I will go there and I'll look up headache. I'll look up the hemorrhoid situation. I'll look up all the different things. And of course, the internet being the internet, I'm not saying it's not a good tool for certain things, but it seems like the internet always wants to give you the worst possible scenario for your specific situation. So if it's, a headache, it might literally tell you it's a brain tumor, or if it's a hemorrhoid, it might tell you it's colon cancer. And I'm not saying that in certain cases that's not true, but I'm saying that, not for everybody, not for everyone that's not true. So yeah, definitely the hemorrhoid situation. For me personally, I have got myself, I got that on like just a repeated cycle, to where every time that would happen, I was convinced it's colon cancer. And then I would always be fearful. Like if I went to the restroom and, might have had the hemorrhoids acting up, I was always afraid like, okay, this is just a normal. But then I would assume like, what if I go to the bathroom next time and like I bleed completely out or something? Like what if it's like my mind would play that out to the point where I was almost afraid to go to the restroom. And I'm not kidding you on that. I was to the point where I was so fearful of going to the restroom and seeing the sight of blood, and that I would literally sometimes I just, a long time ago, I would stop looking, which sounds weird, but it's like when I was young and first experienced this, I would literally like go to the bathroom and I would just take care of what I had to do and flush and just look away, because I didn't want that possibility. And it was just, I guess, easier for me at that age to say I'm just not going to know if it's actually happening versus knowing it's happening, and then that anxiety that's going to come along with it. So that was kind of like my coping at that time. And then, like I said, I've had 2 colonoscopies, 2 upper scopes, and by 2 separate gastroenterologists, both who were great. And, so now I know what it is, and so it's that. But still, as a hypochondriac, can you relate? Let me know in the comments below. Can you relate to kind of some of this? Sometimes I'll even, like for example, here's what I do. This is gonna just kind of give you an example. So, I'm always weirded out about what if my nose bleeds? Like I don't know why, but I'm really worried about nosebleeds. So, like what'll happen is, I'll always blow my nose, and then I'm looking if there's any blood. And then if there's any blood, even if it's just a little bit, I'm always going to that worst possible case. Like, oh my God, where's the blood coming from? Do I have a tumor or something in my... So I'll think that way. And obviously, it's not probably true, but... So my worst possible fear came to light one day. This was probably about 2 years ago. I went to go blow my nose, and there was a little bit more blood than I would say is normal with just dryness. So I had to go over to, and that's my tube for my noodles. So one moment, let me turn that timer off. But anyway, so when that actually happened, I went over to I had to go over to my ENT because, yes, I had an ear, nose, and throat doctor I went to. And I went to him, and he had, looked in there, and actually it was like, he could see what it was, but it was basically, I'm not entirely sure now. I don't know what it was, but it was basically where they had to cauterize it. They had to go in there, and oh my God, that was just the worst experience ever. Them inside my nose and cauterizing that, and I just felt like I was on my deathbed and being tortured by the whole experience. But ever since that has happened, which has been like 2 years ago, I still will blow my nose even if I don't need to. Okay? I will still blow my nose throughout the day just to see if there's any blood, because I'm so petrified of having another nosebleed, and that I check. And when I blow my nose and there's nothing, I feel relief, I feel happy, I feel calm, I feel, I guess, at ease and just whatever. But then, as you know, if there's any amount, just like even what would be considered normal with dryness or whatnot, if I look down and I see anything like that, then I go to the worst possible feeling. It's just that like that doom. It's like a pending doom feeling. Just like, oh my God, what if next time I go to blow it, there's a lot? What if it starts pouring out? What if I have to go back and have my nose cauterized again? All those thoughts just come racing back, and they play on repeat, guys. I'm telling you, it's just over and over and over and over again. It just plays and it doesn't stop. And I don't really know how to ever shut that noise off in my head. But I do this, like I said, it's all the time with different things. It's the headaches for me, headache, brain tumor. The nose thing, like I said, I worry about that consistently. And again, I don't want to make it seem like I call the doctor all the time. Now, as a hypochondriac, I don't know how many of y'all has picked up the phone and called the doctor, but I do it all the time. When I get worried, not for petty things like maybe I used to do years ago. I feel like I maybe have got somewhat better with it. But I have put myself through a lot of tests. I have called the doctor and drove them absolutely bonkers, guys. Like calling the doctor and just, oh my God, I've got this, and that, and the other. And I feel like that's okay because it's our body, and there is always that chance. Maybe the headache is something. Maybe that's it. I get it. But for me, it always was just maybe not completely necessary. But it's not so much the wasting the doctor's time. I don't even know if I want to call it wasting the doctor's time. That's what they're there for, right? To make sure we're healthy. But it's just, I think that the biggest thing is just the impending feeling of doom that I go through, regularly when there is something. Like if I was to have one of those episodes happen and my nose was bleeding, I just absolutely, my mood has just gone from maybe up here to way down, real quick. It's horrible. And I hate that. And like I said, I live throughout my day with these little quirks, checking my nose and checking this, checking that, just a bunch of different things, kind of doing my own little battery of tests, so to speak, just to see, okay, is everything good? And I do it with a lot of other things too. Medical, it's always like the medical stuff, but, and it's ruined my day, it's ruined my, several days sometimes at a time. It's, and the worst part is, and maybe someone else can speak for this, but sometimes you can make yourself feel worse. Sometimes you might say, okay, I've got this headache, maybe it's a brain tumor, but then you literally are getting yourself so worked up and anxious and just, that you might actually get yourself to where you're feeling worse. You're making the headache worse. You're making the nausea worse. You're making whatever it is that you're worried about worse. So I think that's probably, like I said, maybe we'll talk, maybe I'll do a second video on this, because there's a lot to say. But that's my experience being a hypochondriac. Again, it showed up in my life when I was young. It's not really gone away at all. It's still there, and it still pops up sometimes, and it's like, here I am, you know, ready to party. So, and I always worry about, what if I have a heart attack? What if I have, which is a realistic possibility, but I worry about it, What if I have fatal insomnia? I looked that up one time. I used to have trouble sleeping. Maybe who don't, every now and again, right? But for me, I'd have trouble sleeping, and I would assume that I've got this fatal insomnia, which is, don't look that up. Don't look that up, because if you're watching this, you probably might have might be a hypochondriac, so don't look it up. But I would always think that, and I'd be like, what if I don't sleep tonight? Well, what's going to happen? Am I going to start hallucinating? Am I going to, I would think that, and that would happen with my sleep all the time. And it would not even be the fact that I couldn't sleep. That's the craziest shit. Pardon my language. But sometimes I would think myself into not being able to sleep. I wouldn't let myself sleep. Like, I would experience, I think they're called like hypnotic or hypnic jerks, where you're just dozing off to sleep and you jerk yourself awake. It's like lightning hits you, or some people describe it as falling feeling or something. But I would have that. I'd experience that. And that's a normal part, I guess, of falling asleep for some people. But I would always assume it's something far worse. And I was so fearful that it was going to happen to me again that I would just keep myself awake, basically. Like, I would lay there and try to sleep, but it was like the anxiety was so strong. There was so much anxiety. I would lay there and keep myself awake, just at the fear of this is going to happen to me again. And I was so absolutely horrified by the experience. I was so worried about it happening again. And I am a little hot. I got all sorts of stuff happening here in the kitchen. I got the noodles and stuff, so apologize if I look sweaty and hot, but so yeah, that's my experience. And like I said, there's a lot more to say. Always worrying about things. That's my experience being a hypochondriac. So, are you a hypochondriac? Let me know in the comments below. How do you experience symptoms? How do you cope with symptoms? I'd love to know. Please subscribe. I'm going to be doing a lot more mental health videos and kind of describing my journey and some things that I go through on a daily basis. And so yeah, please subscribe. Catch you on the next video. Take care, guys.